Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, as parts of Wales reach drought status, we hear how some farming businesses are putting serious money into storing rainwater when it falls.
Even with significant investments, you still need rain. We're currently making further decisions about investing in even more water capacity for 2027 and beyond, because it feels as though there's not going to be any respite in the current trend in our summers.
More on that later. First, farmers have a crucial role in cleaning up one of the UK's most polluted river systems and could save themselves money in the process, according to a new study. The eastern and western Cleddau rivers in Pembrokeshire flow through farmland which produces as much as 25% of Wales's milk. Researchers from Lancaster University found the area's farms were buying in more fertiliser and processed animal feed than needed, causing a build-up of phosphorus in the soil and polluting waterways. Now, in what's thought to be one of the largest projects of its kind in the world, hundreds of dairy farms are working out their nutrient footprint to help tackle the problem. BBC Wales environment correspondent Stefan Messenger reports.
So here's the river, Rick.
Yeah, I've brought you here because it turns out this is one of the most nutrient polluted of all the significant tributaries in the Western Cleddau.
We've heard a lot about the River Wye, but it's actually Pembrokeshire's Cleddau rivers that are often classed as Wales's worst performing protected waterways. Nutrient levels in the water are far too high, causing algae to grow, starving fish and other wildlife of oxygen. One of the pollutants of most concern is phosphorus. It's found in human sewage, but also livestock manure and artificial fertiliser used by farmers.
The Cleddau is quite an extreme case for dairy farming. We have one of the highest densities of dairy cows in the country.
Rick Cooper runs the Cleddau Project, a group of local volunteers working to restore the rivers to good health. With Welsh Government funding, they commissioned new research to try and better understand Pembrokeshire's phosphorus pollution problem.
And effectively what they did, they measured everything that comes into the Cleddau catchment, all the feed, all the fertiliser, anything else that comes in, and what the phosphorus content of those inputs were, and they did the same with the outputs. So what's leaving the Cleddau catchment, which was mostly meat and milk. And that conclusion of that work is that we were running, if you like, a surplus level that was unsustainable for phosphorus. So every year we are adding more phosphorus to the soil. The reservoir is building up. Part of that phosphorus ends up in the river. 80% of that phosphorus is coming from farming. So bottom line, we're not going to restore the Cleddau to good health unless we can address these nutrient surpluses and change the way we farm.
The study found that farms across the western and eastern Cleddau catchments generated a combined annual surplus of around 360 tonnes of phosphorus, the equivalent weight of 26 double-decker buses worth of the stuff left behind in the land. And in theory, they said there was no need for farms to be buying in so much artificial fertiliser in particular, as Professor Paul Withers of Lancaster University explains.
At the catchment level, the total phosphorus that was contained in animal manures across the catchment is enough to meet the crop requirements. There are substantial savings in fertiliser use.
So this is the risk map that we've produced to a farm. So looking at the red is no spread.
Dairy cooperative First Milk, which has a large cheese processing plant in Pembrokeshire, is trying to address the situation with all 700 of its farmers across the UK, including 200 in West Wales. The group has recently worked out the nutrient footprint of each farm, closely scrutinising use of bought-in feed and fertiliser. Dairy farmer Tom Jones from Kilgetty is among those taking part.
Whatever we buy onto farm, we want it to stay on the farm. We don't want it to leave in the watercourses. We're trying to do things as much as we can to improve the environment, and by measuring all that data, we can show that that is happening.
The data is used alongside new maps produced with the help of satellite imagery, showing the risk of causing river pollution on a field-by-field basis. Farmers will be expected to adjust where they spread fertiliser and slurry accordingly, and introduce other mitigation measures to improve soil health and protect rivers, as Sarah Bennett, area manager for First Milk, explains.
With the nutrient footprinting, it's obviously looking to protect watercourses and reduce runoff on the fields within the farms within West Wales, but it's also looking at the nutrients that are coming on farm and trying to prevent excess nutrients being brought on farm and improve efficiency.
Potentially they'll save money.
Yeah. So obviously it's got a financial benefit if they reduce purchase feed and purchase artificial fertilisers. It'd be better on the bank balance.
Do you think this is going to be a solution then to some of the pressures and the problems that are facing this area's rivers?
Absolutely it will. It's a missing metric for responsible farming.
Lee Truelove is First Milk's Director of Regenerative Farming.
Because you've got sort of acute pollution, which we're obviously all trying to prevent in terms of direct spillage of manures, but then the sort of more chronic pollution is not visible without a metric and without some kind of way of mapping that.
I don't know of anything like that anywhere else in the world where 700 farms have had a farm gate nutrient footprint, and now they're discussing it with every farmer what they can do about it.
Rick Cooper again from the Cleddau project.
This may be about the Cleddau, but it's much wider than that. It's about the whole of Wales. It's about the whole of the UK. We have a nutrient imbalance across a lot of areas of intensive livestock agriculture, and if we don't do anything about it, then our rivers will never recover to good health.
Stefan Messenger reporting there. Well, July is on course to be the driest in Wales for almost 190 years. It means that North Wales and the Upper Severn catchment are the first areas in the UK to be declared officially in drought this year. So far this month, they've seen less than 2% of the usual rainfall. Natural Resources Wales says river levels are approaching all-time lows after a series of back-to-back heatwaves with impacts on wildlife and soil. And the rest of Mid Wales, along with South Wales, has moved into prolonged dry weather status. Johan Williams, operations manager for NRW, told me this doesn't automatically mean water restrictions for everyone, but it is having an impact.
Wales is renowned for our high rainfall, what keeps us so green and lovely usually, but we are seeing more and more of these sort of instances. I mean, only in 2022 and 2025, there were droughts in North Wales. So we are seeing a bit more of a pattern of these developing. It's something I think that as farmers, as landowners and sort of other businesses, we need to get a bit of a hold of how we're going to manage this in the future. And we're looking at, before you know it, it'll be a few months' time and we'll be possibly be back on this call discussing flooding and too much water. And it seems to be that we're either living with too much water or not enough of it. I think we need to have a long, hard look about how we live and how we work, where we build our houses, where we build our public buildings, and what sort of crops we grow and what trees we grow in our forests as well.
Do you think this will mean changes for farmers who are obviously suffering? The farming unions in Wales are talking about heat-stressed livestock, about failing crops already.
Yeah, I mean, and we absolutely feel for the farmers out there. Lots of us who work for Natural Resources Wales have got a farming background, myself included. So this really means something, and it's really devastating to see when we're talking to farmers and who are saying, well, I'm running out of water. I've used my first cut silage. I'm using my second cut silage, even in some cases, which is a desperate position to be in, bearing in mind, we're not even at the end of July yet, and really concerning for those farmers going into the autumn or the winter and having to purchase in expensive feed at that time of the year. And equally for animal farmers who struggled in the spring and the late winter to get some crops in because it was so wet, and now dealing with the fact that they won't grow because it's too dry. So it's a horrible situation to be in.
And on top of all this, you've got wildfires.
We're seeing wildfires across North Wales and across areas of South Wales at the moment, which is causing additional pressure for our teams as well and for rural communities, with farmers are concerned about losing valuable grazing and areas of forestry as well. So our teams are flat out working around the clock, being out there cutting fire breaks to try and reduce the risk of fires spreading, and we're wetting areas where we can get to as well to try and reduce that impact on the environment and the communities of Wales.
Johan Williams on drought in North Wales. Well, in southeast England, Sussex, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have been moved into prolonged dry weather status, one step away from drought. That won't be news to farmers and growers in the area, where some veg businesses are already investing to adapt to the new normal. Barfoots grow broccoli and sweetcorn amongst a long list of crops near Chichester and around the world. The company spent £1 million on a new reservoir, which holds 28 million gallons of rainwater and recycled treated water from their factory. Barfoots Commercial Director Dave says irrigation is now an essential part of veg growing.
We have effectively, over the years as a farming business, moved to pretty much 100% irrigable land. So that means that the land that we now farm on all has access to water. So that's just a condition in operating in the current climate. And if you look at how our summers are now turning out. So, I mean, that's a huge logistical operation when you're farming, around 10,000 acres across Sussex and Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But even with significant investments, you still need rain. We're currently making further decisions about investing in even more water capacity for 2027 and beyond, because it feels as though there's not going to be any respite in the current trend in our summers.
So what's the difference then in the tender stem broccoli, for instance? Last year when you didn't have the reservoir, and this year now you've got it.
So last year at the peak of the heatwave, we were yielding broadly 50%. Half of what we were expecting to harvest just wasn't there, which was a huge, huge impact. This year, currently, with the heat wave, we are yielding 25 to 30% less. So it's effectively mitigated about half of the issue of the impact on yield. We're still exposed with the climate doing what it is, so we still have some smaller programs that we've now had to plant in as far as Western Europe to maximise the effect of microclimates in other regions being a bit further away. If we didn't do that, we simply wouldn't be able to supply our customers in full.
So the heatwave hasn't just affected your farms here, it's affected your other farms in Europe?
It certainly has. Where we're fully committed and fully focused on farming as a British operation, we still are now actively looking at other regions that we can diversify our farming in order to smooth off the curves of when you have these major weather impacts.
And is investment in water actually something you're repeating around the world?
I mean, it is very different if you look at some of the operations that we're operating in. We have a big operation in West Africa, in Senegal, which is a joint venture. The operation there is effectively strategically placed in a location north of Senegal, where the River Senegal comes out and branches out into the Atlantic Ocean. We're able to divert the water just before it enters the Atlantic and irrigate our crops using that water. Now, in a region where there's almost no rainfall because it's effectively in the desert, we have an abundance of water that we're able to utilise for our farming operations there. If you look at our operations in Spain, we've had a number of years where temperatures have been soaring, water's been a major issue, but then go back a year and there was actually plenty of rainfall. Water reservoirs filled up and, in the short term, water isn't as strained as it was previously. So it is very much regional, and I would argue that the most unpredictable weather that we face across all of our global hubs is right here in the UK, because we just don't know what the summer's going to do.
How much water then is left in your brand new reservoir for the rest of this summer?
Well, at the current rate, we are looking at utilising all of that water within about 4 weeks. So if I go back to the point, if we don't have any more rain, within 4 weeks, that reservoir is likely to be running dry.
And then what?
We would obviously manage the crops as effectively as we can, given the current weather conditions. We would look to source additional water where it's available and where it's possible. But ultimately, your biggest impact, you just don't have the crop. You'd be looking further afield at trying to source the product that's not actually being grown here on our own farm. So it is certainly a concern. And I know that we would not be the only grower that would be concerned about just a continued dry August. So we're certainly a little bit nervous, but thankfully I think that we've still been better placed than we were last summer.
Ketan Dave from Barfoots. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Sarah Swadling, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.